It's September 29th. It is, I was just talking about how my unborn child died, and it got pretty dark. Right now it's around 7:30. A little bit after, according to this clock, but as I say, this clock is a little bit fast. One thing I might add is that before I was fired from the Post Pub, I did think it was strange. I don't know if Chris Dabney brought this up because he wanted to be sort of misleading in some way as to who he knew. And it wasn't really just right, like immediately before I was being fired. It was probably sometime after he knew I was pregnant. And he didn't seem to be in a bad mood when he was telling me this. But he told me, he started talking about the Heinz Air. And why would Chris Dabney know who the Heinz person was? I remember at the time that I worked there, a lot of people from different places came into that restaurant. And a lot of United States government people went there. And I'm really glad to say that some of the people that I met, some of the women I met, I was very impressed with. And I really liked, no matter what country they were from, it was really nice to see some assertive women who really, I didn't feel that they thought I was threatening in any way. And yeah, I tend to be, I can be sort of shy and not stand up for myself sometimes, and then I definitely have my side where, deep down, if I really have to, I will try to stand up for what I think is right, and I will be assertive, and sometimes I can be a little aggressive in more of a slightly traditional male sense, I think. But even sometimes men are more careful with each other and their feelings and egos, because I think men understand men so well. They know what will insult a man. And for me, if I insult a man, it's an accident, typically. Unless I'm directly trying to insult somebody. Typically it's an accident. And I'm just saying that in general, I didn't know why sometimes I've had people feel intimidated by me now and then, but sometimes on the East Coast I didn't feel it was that way at all. And I didn't feel that some of the men there, they didn't seem to mind some of the women who were stronger-willed, because they were used to it. They had to get used to it. And that was kind of a small little, not, it didn't apply to everybody, but it was a little break from the norm. And people came in who were just off the street, sort of looked like maybe they were a prostitute. People came in who were having lunch after business at the White House. There were journalists, there were scientists and neurologists. Many neurologists wanted to watch me and observe me while I was at work. And I remember even back then I wasn't sure why so many neurologists wanted to talk to me one-on-one. And now that I know what this country's done to me, and that, they had different people involved at different times, I think it's that there were people who knew what had happened to me and that I should be pretty much brain dead after what was done to me. And neurologists, there were some neurologists who seemed to be fascinated by my ability to still go about life, not fall apart because of my personal life in a workplace. And maybe the fact that I didn't write down any orders and I was able to remember things and do a good job. And there were people from the Department of Defense who I think were good people, and there were people from the Department of Defense that I think were not good people. There were people there from the Department of Justice, and the FBI headquarters, by the way, was about 3 blocks away. I mean, maybe a couple more blocks than that, but not very far. It was literally right around the corner. You walked a couple blocks down and then go to this little kind of a turnabout area, and if you looked down the street you could see a few blocks more, and there was the FBI headquarters. It was within walking distance, and a couple of times I walked from work to in that direction. And that was one time when I knew Chris Dabney was following me, because I was going to the FBI offices to see if I could to get records still for my FOIA, because I still wanted to know what was going on in the Pacific Northwest. And I turned around and saw Chris Dabney was way off in the background, but appeared to be following me, and then he kind of went off to the side and disappeared. So that was the only time I noticed him following me. The other people I met towards the end, I met a lot of Australians, and I met some British people who were really mean to me. They were very callous, very mean, and they mocked me and made fun of me. And they were younger. They were probably between mid-20s to early 30s. I remember this one couple specifically. I remember where they sat at the bar. I remember it was a man and a woman, and they were very mean. The other thing, so as I say, Chris did not bring up too many people, like who he knew. When I first was staying with him, I remember one time, this woman from Mossad, I guess I shouldn't assume she was with Mossad. And actually, I really don't know. She could have been with anybody. CIA, maybe nobody. Maybe just in town. But I ran into her and asked her for directions, because I was lost. And she just happened to be the first person I approached. She told me that she was going to be singing, asked me what I was doing after she gave me directions, said that she was in from Israel, and she was going to be singing at opera at this concert, gave me her business card. I thought she was nice, and just meeting her, she seemed to be okay. And then Chris Dabney saw the card, and he was about to tell me that I couldn't stay there anymore, and then he saw her business card and said that I could stay. And I wasn't sure why that was. But then I tried to email her later, and she never responded. It was shortly after that time Chris got a Jewish girlfriend, I think. Or possibly he had a Jewish girlfriend already. I also remember, I think that Chris is one of the individuals that is able to read minds. I think that he has some sort of psychic ability, and he works for the government. I didn't know that I was being used for research at the Post Pub, that people were using me, but I can look back now at it and realize that that's what was being done. I have a feeling that the video camera that was always running, which is typical of any restaurant, I have a feeling there was a little shop upstairs that was the office, which I never saw, and I have a feeling that it was running videotapes of me at work and other people at work, and that there was documentation that was occurring. The only people that I knew of that were allowed to go up there were this guy Bob Bilou, whatever, the owner of the restaurant, who was actually from California. And I know Chris went up there. Chris Dabney did. And I know Kathy did. I did not ever hear about anyone else going up to that office, but that's not to say that they didn't. And so aside from my thinking I don't know why this business card made any difference to him. The only person that he ever brought up that had any connection directly to somebody that I had met was Heinz. And what Chris Dabney told me that he was raised Catholic, born and raised in Virginia. And Nikki, his best friend, said that she was born and raised in Virginia and she was Methodist. But they were both sort of not like totally practicing. I mean, I don't really know what their actual religious beliefs were, but anyway, he one day said, and I'm talking about Teresa Heinz's son, the one that I had met who was doing an art thing in Oregon. And he said to me, he said, you shouldn't be so hard on him. And I don't think I was being hard on him at all. I don't remember really bringing him up into the conversation too much. It was sort of not a really big, it wasn't a really huge point that I was making. His name came up for some reason, and I really don't know why, but that Heinz person was the only time that it had come up, and he was never first and foremost in my mind, you know. I mean, I don't think there was ever one specific person that I fixated on or just talked about constantly. And regardless of the fact of, you know, who he was connected with or connected to. But he said something about that he knew him, that he knew, in some way he implied that he knew this man. And he said, you know, he actually has been through a lot. Or he said he's done things that most people wouldn't do. And I said, I don't know what you mean. And he said, well, when his dad died in an accident, and when his mom remarried, he left the house. He had this huge fortune, and left the house, hitchhiked, worked as a vagabond or homeless person, and decided he was going to make it on his own. And he got cut off. He was going to be disowned from the family money if he walked away, and he chose to walk away and live his own life and make his own way in the world. That's what I was told. I mean, if that is a true story, I have no way of checking on that. But what he said is that he left his house when he was something like 16 or very young, and basically abandoned a huge inheritance and fortune, was kind of cut off from the family for it. And he said, and I was told, he said, I don't want any part of it. And he wanted to do something different in life. So all of a sudden this Heinz guy, the son at least, you know, who was not, everybody's entitled to their own, you know, description, with or without the family, the rest of the family. But he was suddenly being depicted to me as the man who was leaving it all, or the teenager who turned his nose up to society. And it's just kind of a funny idea to turn up one's nose to society. Is sort of a contradiction. So he snubbed the social circles and became friends with the everyman.